My name is Reese. And on March 15th, I discovered that 3 years of loyalty meant absolutely nothing when measured against one woman's wounded pride. I was standing in my office at 7 in the morning, organizing client files, when Evangeline Beaumont burst through my door like a hurricane in Louboutin heels. Her perfectly sculpted face was twisted with rage, her emerald eyes blazing as she pointed one diamond-encrusted finger directly at me. "You will be terminated today," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "Last night at the Children's Hospital charity gala, you deliberately disrespected me. When I approached your table, you remained seated like some kind of peasant. The absolute nerve." Her lips curled into a sneer that made my blood run cold. "My husband will hear about this immediately, and you'll be clearing out your desk before lunch." I felt something crack inside my chest as I realized my entire career was about to crumble because I hadn't jumped up fast enough when the CEO's wife walked by. 3 years of building the international division from 2 clients to 47. 3 years of working weekends, missing family dinners, pouring my soul into this company. All destroyed because Evangeline Beaumont's ego couldn't handle what she perceived as a slight. Before I continue with what happened next, could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments if you've ever had someone try to destroy your career over something completely ridiculous? Because what I'm about to share with you involves the most satisfying revenge I've ever witnessed, and you need to hear every single detail. Also, please like this story, subscribe, and click the bell icon because stories like this need to be heard. Let me take you back to how this all started. 8 months earlier, I'd been browsing freelance tutoring websites, looking for extra income to help pay off my student loans. My degree in international business came with a specialty in Mandarin Chinese, thanks to 2 years I'd spent studying in Beijing during college. I was fluent, but more importantly, I understood the cultural nuances that most Western learners missed completely. That's when I found the posting on Elite Academic Services, an exclusive tutoring platform for wealthy clients. Someone needed intensive Mandarin lessons, twice weekly, at their residence. The pay was extraordinary, $300 per session. No name was listed, just an address in the most expensive part of the city and very specific requirements: complete discretion, professional appearance, and absolute confidentiality. I applied using my maiden name, Reese Morgan, instead of my married name that appeared on all my work documents. I styled my hair differently, wore glasses I didn't normally need, and dressed more conservatively than my usual office attire. When you're working with ultra-wealthy clients, they often prefer their staff to blend into the background. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, and everything inside screamed money. That's where I first met my student, though I had no idea who she really was. She introduced herself simply as Eva, and her attitude told me everything I needed to know about how she viewed people like me. "You're here to teach me Mandarin," she announced without even a hello. "I need to be conversational within 6 months. Not just basic phrases, I need to conduct business meetings, negotiate contracts, and sound sophisticated. Can you do that? Or should I find someone else?" I nodded politely. "Absolutely. What's your current level?" She waved her hand dismissively. "I know some words. Let's just start." Within 10 minutes, I realized Eva knew almost nothing. She mispronounced basic greetings, mixed up tones completely, and became visibly frustrated when I corrected her. But she was determined, I'll give her that. Every session, she pushed herself harder, though she treated me like I was nothing more than a highly paid servant. "Bring me coffee next time," she'd command at the end of lessons, "and make sure you use the service entrance from now on. The doorman shouldn't see tutors coming through the main lobby." I needed the money, so I smiled and nodded. $600 a week was worth swallowing my pride. As months passed, I learned more about Eva's motivation. She was working on what she called the deal of a lifetime, a joint venture with Chinese investors worth $50 million. She'd convinced everyone in her social circle that she was fluent in Mandarin, that she'd studied it extensively, and that she was the perfect person to handle international negotiations. "My husband thinks I'm naturally gifted with languages," she bragged during one session. "Everyone at the country club is so impressed when I drop Mandarin phrases into conversation. They have no idea how business really works." The irony was painful. Eva could barely string together a coherent sentence in Mandarin, even after months of intensive lessons. Every word had to be written phonetically for her to pronounce correctly. Her grammar was elementary at best, but she was living in a fantasy where she was this sophisticated international businesswoman. Meanwhile, at my day job, I was actually doing the work she pretended to do. I'd built our company's Asian market division from nothing. I spoke with Chinese clients daily, handled complex negotiations, and had personally closed deals worth millions. But Eva, who I still didn't know was Evangeline Beaumont, was playing pretend with her husband's money. The breakthrough came 6 weeks before that terrible morning in my office. Eva was practicing her presentation for the Chinese investors, and it was a disaster. She couldn't remember basic business terms, kept confusing yes and no, and was essentially speaking gibberish with a confident tone. "This isn't working," I told her gently. "You need more practice with fundamental concepts before attempting complex negotiations." Her face turned bright red. "Are you saying I'm stupid?" "Not at all. Mandarin is incredibly difficult. Most people need years to reach business-level fluency. I don't have years." She exploded. "This presentation is everything to me. It's my chance to prove I belong in the business world, not just as some trophy wife. You have to make this work." That was the first time I saw real vulnerability in her. Beneath all the arrogance and entitlement was someone desperate to be taken seriously. I actually felt sorry for her. "We'll work extra sessions," I promised. "I'll create phonetic scripts for your entire presentation. You can memorize it word for word." Her relief was obvious. "You can't tell anyone about this. If people knew I was getting help." "Of course not. Client confidentiality is sacred to me." Over the next month and a half, I basically rewrote her entire presentation in phonetic Mandarin. We practiced for hours until she could recite it perfectly, though she still didn't understand what she was saying. I created backup materials, alternative phrases for different scenarios, and even coached her on proper bowing techniques and cultural customs. She started treating me slightly better during this period, not as an equal, but at least like a valued employee rather than disposable help. She'd offer me drinks, ask about my background, and occasionally say please and thank you. "You're quite good at this," she admitted one evening. "Where did you learn to speak so fluently?" I told her about my studies in Beijing, my business degree, and my work in international markets. I was careful not to mention company names or specific details that might connect me to my day job. "Impressive," she said, though her tone suggested she still saw me as hired help who just happened to be educated. "You should consider working for a real company instead of just tutoring." If she only knew. 2 weeks before the investor presentation, Eva was finally hitting her stride. She could deliver the entire pitch smoothly, answer basic questions, and even handle small talk about weather and travel. She was nowhere near fluent, but she could fake it well enough for a formal business meeting. "I'm going to be magnificent," she declared after our final practice session. "Those investors won't know what hit them. This deal will change everything." I smiled and packed up my materials. "You've worked incredibly hard. I'm sure it will go well." That's when she made the comment that would haunt me later. "You know, I'm attending a charity gala this weekend. It's for the Children's Hospital, and all the important business people in the city will be there. I'll finally be able to show off my language skills to everyone." My heart sank. The company I worked for was a major sponsor of that same gala. I'd be there representing our international division, sitting at our corporate table. There was a good chance I'd see Eva, though she still had no idea who I really was. I considered canceling, or at least warning her somehow, but I couldn't figure out how to do it without revealing my identity. Besides, what were the odds we'd actually interact? It was a huge event with hundreds of attendees. The gala was beautiful. Our company had purchased an entire table near the front, and I was seated with our senior management team and their spouses. I'd chosen an elegant black dress, styled my hair in an updo, and worn contact lenses instead of my usual glasses. I looked completely different from the conservative tutor Eva knew. Halfway through dinner, I spotted her across the room. She was radiant in a stunning silver gown, holding court at what was obviously the most prestigious table in the venue. She was animated, gesturing expressively as she spoke to the people around her. Even from a distance, I could tell she was having the time of her life. Then I saw him, the man sitting beside her, nodding and smiling as she talked. My blood turned to ice as recognition hit me like a freight train. Ava was Evangeline Beaumont, the wife of my CEO. The woman I'd been tutoring for 8 months was married to my boss. I spent the rest of the evening in a daze, barely touching my food, praying she wouldn't notice me. When dessert was served, I excused myself to use the restroom, hoping to avoid any chance encounters. But fate had other plans. As I was returning to my table, Evangeline was walking directly toward me. She was heading to greet someone at a nearby table, and our paths would intersect in seconds. I quickly sat down and focused intensely on my plate, hoping she'd pass by without paying attention to me. That's when everything went wrong. "Reese?" a voice called out. "Reese Patterson?" One of my colleagues was trying to get my attention from across the table. I looked up automatically, responding to my name, just as Evangeline walked past. Our eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. I saw confusion flicker across her face, like she almost recognized me but couldn't quite place where from. Then, the moment passed, and she continued walking. I thought I was safe. I thought those 2 seconds of near recognition wouldn't matter. I was so incredibly wrong. The next morning, she stormed into my office with murder in her eyes, and I finally understood what had happened. Evangeline had spent the entire night trying to figure out where she knew me from. When she couldn't place my face, she'd convinced herself that I'd deliberately snubbed her by not standing when she passed my table. In her mind, some random employee had disrespected the CEO's wife at a charity gala, and that simply could not be tolerated. "Pack your things," my boss said after Evangeline finished her tirade and stormed out. His face was grim, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Reese. I really am. But I can't have this kind of drama at home." I stared at him in disbelief. "You're firing me because I didn't stand up fast enough when your wife walked by? She says you deliberately ignored her, that you made her look foolish in front of important people. That's insane. I was eating dinner and didn't even realize she was there." He sighed heavily. "It doesn't matter. She's made up her mind, and arguing with her will only make things worse for both of us. I'll give you excellent references, and I'll make sure you get a generous severance package." I felt my entire world collapsing. 3 years of perfect performance reviews, countless successful deals, relationships with clients who trusted me completely. All of it meant nothing because Evangeline Beaumont's pride had been wounded. That's when inspiration struck. "Before I go," I said calmly, "there's something you should know about your wife's big presentation with the Chinese investors." I walked to my computer and opened my email account. With a few quick clicks, I sent him a message with video attachments from every single tutoring session I'd recorded for my own reference. "Check your email," I said quietly. His face went pale as he opened the first video. There was Evangeline, stumbling through basic Mandarin phrases, asking me to repeat everything phonetically, admitting she couldn't understand what she was saying. "She's been lying to you," I continued. "For 8 months, I've been her private tutor. She can't speak Mandarin beyond memorized scripts. Everything she's told you about her language abilities is completely false." I removed my glasses and let my hair down, transforming back into the person Evangeline knew as her tutor. "I'm Reese Morgan," I said, "and effective immediately. Your wife's Mandarin lessons are canceled." The silence in that office was deafening. My boss sat frozen, staring at the computer screen where his wife was clearly struggling with pronunciation that any first-year language student would master easily. The video showed her asking me, over and over, to write everything in English letters because she couldn't read Chinese characters. "This presentation is in 3 days, he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I know. I helped her prepare every word of it. She's memorized it like a script, but she doesn't understand what she's saying. If anyone asks her an unscripted question in Mandarin, or if she needs to deviate from her prepared remarks even slightly, the whole thing will collapse." He looked up at me with something between horror and disbelief. "Why didn't you tell me who you were during the lessons?" "Client confidentiality. She hired me through a tutoring service under strict privacy agreements. I had no idea she was your wife until last night at the gala." Even then, I planned to keep her secret because that's what professionals do. I gathered the last of my personal items from my desk. But since she's decided to destroy my career over an imaginary slight, I figure those confidentiality agreements are void. Wait, he stood up quickly. Don't leave yet. We need to discuss this. There's nothing to discuss. Your wife made her choice. I'm just making sure you understand what that choice actually costs. I walked toward the door, then paused. Those Chinese investors aren't just bringing money to this deal. They're bringing their top executives, their translators, and their cultural liaisons. People who will immediately recognize whether your wife can actually communicate or if she's just reciting memorized phrases. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and I walked out of that building for what I thought would be the last time. But I was wrong about that, too. The next 3 days passed in a blur of job applications and angry phone calls from Evangeline. Apparently, my boss had confronted her about the tutoring sessions, and she was furious that I'd betrayed her trust. "You signed confidentiality agreements?" she screamed during one particularly unpleasant voicemail. "I'll sue you for everything you have." I called her back once, mainly out of curiosity. "Actually, Evangeline, you should read those agreements more carefully. They protect client privacy from outside parties, but they don't prevent tutors from defending themselves when clients attempt to damage their careers through false accusations." "I never made false accusations. You told your husband I deliberately disrespected you at the gala, but you and I both know you didn't recognize me there. You're destroying my reputation based on a completely fictional narrative you created in your head." The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're still fired." "Yes, I am. And your presentation is tomorrow. Good luck." I hung up and tried to put the whole mess behind me. I had bigger problems to worry about, like finding a new job and explaining to potential employers why I'd left my previous position so suddenly. But I couldn't stop thinking about those Chinese investors. Some of them were people I'd worked with professionally over the past 3 years. Mr. Chen Wei from Beijing Manufacturing, who always started meetings with personal questions about family. Miss Lu Hong from Shanghai Logistics, who appreciated cultural references and traditional greetings. They were coming to this presentation expecting to meet someone who understood their language and their business customs. Instead, they were about to encounter Evangeline Beaumont with her memorized script and her complete ignorance of everything beyond basic pronunciation. The morning of the presentation, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I kept imagining how it would unfold, how quickly the investors would realize they were being deceived, how badly it would reflect on everyone involved. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. It was James Morrison, my former boss, and he sounded desperate. "Reese, I need your help. I don't work there anymore, remember? The investors are here early. They wanted to have lunch before the presentation, and Evangeline is panicking. She can't handle casual conversation in Mandarin. She's locked herself in the bathroom and won't come out." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "That's unfortunate, but it's not my problem anymore. I'll give you your job back. Full reinstatement, a promotion, a raise. Whatever you want. Just please, help us get through this presentation." I considered it for exactly 3 seconds. "No. Reese, please. This deal is worth $50 million to the company. If it falls apart, we'll have to lay off half the international division." "Then you should have thought about that before you fired me for not standing up fast enough when your wife walked by. I know I made a mistake. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. But please don't let our employees suffer because of my bad judgment." That hit me harder than I expected. The international division wasn't just my work. It was built with the help of amazing colleagues who didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of this mess. "I'll make you a deal," I said finally. "I'll come in as a consultant. One time only. I'll help with translation during the presentation, but I'm not doing it to save Evangeline's reputation. I'm doing it to protect the people who still work there." Thank you so much." "And James? After today, I never want to see or speak to your wife again." I arrived at the office 45 minutes before the presentation was scheduled to begin. The main conference room had been transformed into an impressive setup with multimedia displays, translated materials, and elegant catering that showed respect for Chinese business culture. Evangeline was standing near the windows, practicing her opening remarks under her breath. She looked beautiful and professional, but I could see the terror in her eyes when she noticed me walking in. "What is she doing here?" she hissed at her husband. "Helping to save your presentation," I replied calmly. "Unless you'd prefer to handle the Q&A session on your own?" Her face went pale. We both knew she couldn't handle unscripted questions. "Fine, but you stay in the background. This is my presentation, my deal, my moment." "Understood." The investors arrived precisely on time, which I'd expected. Mr. Chen Wei greeted me in Mandarin, and I responded appropriately, introducing myself as a consultant supporting the presentation. Miss Liu Hong asked about my background in Chinese markets, and we had a brief, pleasant conversation about trade relationships. I could see Evangeline watching our exchange with growing anxiety. The investors were clearly comfortable with me, but when she attempted to join the conversation with her stilted, rehearsed phrases, their polite smiles became strained. "Perhaps we should begin the formal presentation," Mr. Chen suggested in English, clearly sensing the awkwardness. Evangeline took her position at the front of the room and launched into her prepared remarks. I had to admit, months of practice had paid off. Her pronunciation was decent, and she delivered the memorized content with confidence. The investors listened politely, taking notes and occasionally nodding. Everything was going according to plan. Then Ms. Liu Hong raised her hand. "Excuse me," she said in Mandarin. "Could you clarify the logistics timeline for the Shanghai distribution center?" Evangeline's face went blank. The question wasn't part of her script. "I'm sorry," she said in English. "Could you repeat that?" Ms. Liu Hong repeated the question, this time speaking more slowly and clearly. Evangeline looked at me desperately. I could have helped her. I could have translated the question and coached her through an answer. Instead, I remained silent. I think, Evangeline stammered, attempting to respond in broken Mandarin that made no grammatical sense. Mr. Chen Wei frowned and exchanged glances with his colleagues. They were beginning to understand that something was very wrong. "Perhaps," Mr. Chen said diplomatically, "we could continue the discussion in English?" But the damage was already done. The investors had come here expecting to work with someone who could communicate effectively in their language. They'd been promised a partner who understood Chinese business culture and could facilitate smooth international cooperation. Instead, they'd discovered that their primary contact had essentially been lying about her qualifications. Ms. Liu Hong asked another question, this time in English, about regulatory compliance in Shanghai. It was a basic question that anyone involved in Chinese business should be able to answer easily. Evangeline clearly had no idea what to say. She looked at her husband, then at me, then back at the investors. "Perhaps my consultant could address that," she said weakly. I stepped forward and answered the question thoroughly, explaining the regulatory framework, recent changes in compliance requirements, and best practices for foreign companies operating in Shanghai. The investors nodded appreciatively and began directing their follow-up questions to me instead of Evangeline. For the next 20 minutes, I essentially took over the presentation. I answered detailed questions about logistics, cultural considerations, legal requirements, and market analysis. The investors were engaged and interested, clearly impressed with the depth of knowledge I was providing. Evangeline stood to the side, completely sidelined at her own presentation. Finally, Mr. Chen Wei addressed the elephant in the room. "I'm confused about the structure of this partnership," he said carefully. "We were told that Mrs. Beaumont would be our primary liaison, but it seems clear that Miss..." He looked at me questioningly. "Patterson," I supplied. "Miss Patterson has the expertise we need for this collaboration. Could you clarify who would actually be managing this relationship?" The room fell silent. Evangeline's husband looked like he wanted to disappear. Evangeline herself was staring at the floor, her face bright red with humiliation. "I think," I said gently, "there may have been some miscommunication about roles and responsibilities. Perhaps it would be best to reschedule this discussion after the organizational structure can be clarified." Mr. Chen Wei nodded gravely. "I think that would be wise." The investors gathered their materials and prepared to leave. Miss Liu Hong approached me privately. We were very impressed with your knowledge and professionalism, she said quietly. If you were to represent this company in future negotiations, we would be very interested in proceeding. However, we cannot work with someone who has misrepresented their qualifications so significantly. After the investors left, the conference room felt like a tomb. Evangeline was sitting in a chair, staring at her hands. Her husband was pacing near the windows. And I was gathering my notes, preparing to leave for good. $50 million, James said quietly. Gone. It was never really there, I replied. You can't build international partnerships on lies and pretense. Those investors are too smart and too experienced to be fooled for long. Evangeline finally looked up. This is all your fault. I turned to face her directly. No, Evangeline. This is the consequence of your choices. You chose to lie about your qualifications. You chose to destroy my career over a perceived slight that existed only in your imagination. You chose to prioritize your ego over the success of this deal. I worked so hard on this presentation. You memorized words you didn't understand for a deal you weren't qualified to handle. That's not work, that's performance art. I walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I actually felt sorry for you during those tutoring sessions. You seemed so desperate to prove yourself, to be taken seriously. But respect isn't something you can fake or demand. It's something you earn through competence, integrity, and treating other people with basic human dignity. You're still fired, she said weakly. I laughed. Evangeline, after today, I wouldn't work for this company again if you begged me. But I was wrong about that too. 2 weeks later, James Morrison called me with an interesting proposition. The board of directors had been less than pleased when they learned about the failed investor presentation and the circumstances surrounding my termination. Apparently, several board members had worked with me professionally over the years and were furious that I'd been fired over such trivial reasons. We'd like to offer you the position of Vice President of International Business Development, James said. It comes with a substantial salary increase, your own budget, and complete autonomy over the international division. What about Evangeline? She's no longer involved in business operations. The board made that very clear. I considered the offer carefully. I'll take it, but with conditions. First, I want a written guarantee that family members of executives cannot interfere with personnel decisions. Second, I want the authority to rebuild the international division my way, without interference from anyone. Done. And third, I want a formal apology from the company for my wrongful termination to be included in my personnel file. Absolutely. 6 months later, I'd rebuilt the Chinese investor relationship and successfully closed the deal Evangeline had destroyed. The Shanghai partnership was worth $68 million more than the original proposal and led to additional opportunities throughout Asia. Evangeline, meanwhile, had become something of a pariah in her social circle. Word had spread quickly about her failed presentation and fabricated language skills. The same people who had once been impressed by her Mandarin phrases now whispered about her dishonesty and poor judgment. I heard through office gossip that she'd tried to blame me for sabotaging her presentation, but too many people had witnessed what actually happened. The investors themselves had made it clear that the problem wasn't sabotage. It was incompetence masked as expertise. The final piece of poetic justice came 8 months after that disastrous presentation. James Morrison approached me with a delicate request. The board is considering some changes in executive structure, he said carefully. They're impressed with your work rebuilding the international division, and they're wondering if you'd be interested in taking on additional responsibilities. Such as? They're thinking about creating a new position, Senior Vice President of Global Operations. It would involve overseeing all international business, including partnerships, acquisitions, and strategic planning. I smiled. That sounds like the kind of role that would require reporting directly to the board of directors. It would. And presumably, it would involve significant decision-making authority over the direction of the company's international strategy. That's correct. I pretended to consider the offer. I accept. 3 months later, I was officially promoted to Senior Vice President of Global Operations, making me one of the most senior executives in the company. My office was 2 floors above James Morrison's, and my authority extended across every international deal the company pursued. Evangeline never spoke to me again after that presentation, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. But I heard she'd started taking Spanish lessons from a different tutoring service, probably planning some new scheme to establish herself as an international business expert. I hoped her new tutor was more patient than I'd been. The irony of the whole situation wasn't lost on me. Evangeline had tried to destroy my career because she felt I hadn't shown her proper respect. But her vindictive behavior had ultimately led to the exposure of her lies, the failure of her business ambitions, and my promotion to a position with more authority than she'd ever dreamed of having. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor about these things. Looking back, I realized that those 8 months of tutoring sessions had taught me something valuable about people like Evangeline. They're so focused on appearing important that they forget to actually become competent. They mistake performance for substance, arrogance for confidence, and entitlement for leadership. But the business world has a way of exposing pretense eventually. You can only fake expertise for so long before reality catches up with you. And when it does, you better hope the people you've stepped on aren't in a position to step back. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever watched someone's lies catch up with them in the most spectacular way possible? Have you ever been in a situation where standing up for yourself led to consequences you never expected? Drop a comment below and tell me your story, because I have a feeling I'm not the only one who's learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the natural consequences of their own actions. And if you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of workplace drama, unexpected twists, and the satisfaction that comes from watching karma work its magic. Because trust me, this wasn't the last time I encountered someone who thought they could destroy other people's lives without facing any consequences themselves. I watched their faces as the presentation concluded. Not a single muscle moved in the conference room. 9 pairs of empty stares. Then Declan, the division director, cleared his throat and exchanged glances with the others before addressing me. Your ideas are interesting, May. The resource optimization plan shows considerable thought. He paused, tapping his pen against the glass tabletop. However, after careful consideration, we've decided to go in a different direction. My heart dropped, even though I'd anticipated these exact words. I see, I replied, gathering my presentation materials while the silence grew oppressive. Look, you're brilliant. No one disputes that, Declan continued, his tone shifting to something falsely sympathetic. But this is the 9th project proposal where we've reached the same conclusion. You simply don't fit our culture here. He didn't even bother lowering his voice. The statement hung between us, as several executives nodded in agreement. Through the glass walls, I noticed staff members pretending not to watch. The culture, I repeated flatly. Yes, we value team players who understand our established approaches. Declan leaned back, already dismissing me. Someone will take over your work immediately. We appreciate your contributions, but perhaps your vision would align better elsewhere. As I gathered my materials, Phoebe from marketing whispered to Terrence, loud enough for me to hear, another May special. All brilliance, zero practicality. Someone snickered. I tucked my tablet under my arm, taking one last look at the presentation I'd spent weekends perfecting. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the burning knot in my throat. Walking through the office felt like moving through molasses, each step heavy with the weight of yet another rejection. Behind me, through the still open door, I heard Griffin's voice. Now that's settled. Who's joining for drinks at Ivy's tonight? Laughter erupted as the door swung shut. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. This wasn't just about a project. This was systematic. 3 years, 9 different projects, 9 rejections with the identical excuse. My phone buzzed with a message from my only ally, Lena. How bad? I typed back, same story, different day. The elevator doors opened to reveal Declan's executive assistant, Kennedy. Her eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. Oh, May, I heard what happened. Such a shame. Is it? I asked, stepping inside. Kennedy shifted uncomfortably. Between us, your proposal was brilliant, but you know how things work here. I did, all too well. When the doors opened at the lobby, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of walking out, I pressed the button for the 5th floor, records and analytics. If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told you didn't belong, you know the feeling crawling through my chest right then. If this story resonates with you so far, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Trust me, what happens next is something you won't want to miss. My name is Mei Tanaka, 32 years old, systems analyst with specializations in organizational efficiency and project management. I graduated top of my class, speak 4 languages, and have an uncanny ability to identify inefficiencies that others miss. I'm also, apparently, a walking cultural misfit, according to the leadership at Palmer Innovations. My first removal came 3 years ago. I developed a resource allocation system that would have eliminated redundancies, specifically, certain executives' vanity projects that drained company resources. The division head, Griffin, had smiled while explaining I didn't understand the nuances of company culture. The second time was when I suggested promoting talented internal staff instead of hiring expensive outsiders with connections to senior leadership. Terrence had personally shown me the door, explaining that culture fit was as important as competence. By the 6th rejection, I recognized the pattern clearly. Whenever my work threatened their comfortable ecosystem, their lunches, their bonuses, their buddies in middle management, I became culturally incompatible. What broke me wasn't the 7th rejection. It was what I discovered afterward. While clearing my temporary desk, I noticed discrepancies in quarterly performance metrics that others had missed. Year-over-year decline hidden behind creative accounting. Mounting complaints from key clients buried in sanitized reports. The same executives pushing me aside were destroying what had once been an industry leader. That night, I changed my approach. I began quiet conversations with mid-level managers who shared my concerns. Dinners after work, coffee meetings before the day started. We exchanged observations about troubling trends while I cultivated relationships throughout the organization, staying valuable enough to remain employed but never prominent enough to trigger another dismissal. During my 8th rejection, Kennedy had pulled me aside afterward. "They're afraid of you," she whispered. "Your ideas expose their inadequacies." Now, after this 9th rejection, I stood in the 5th floor records department, facing Tomas, the aging data manager who remembered when the company's founder was still alive. "May? What brings you here?" He adjusted his glasses, peering at me over ancient computer monitors. "I need access to the integrated performance analytics for the last 5 years," I said quietly. "The raw data, not the executive summaries." Tomas hesitated. "That's restricted information, I know. But I also know you've watched what's happening here longer than anyone." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Why do you need it?" I took a breath. "Because someone needs to show the board what's really happening before it's too late." Tomas studied me for a long moment before turning to his keyboard. "I never gave you this," he murmured, typing rapidly. "And if anyone asks, you hacked my system." My tablet pinged with an incoming file transfer. "Thank you," I said. He didn't look up. "Don't thank me yet. What you're about to do will make you enemies." "I already have those," I replied. That weekend, as I pored over the data in my apartment, patterns emerged that confirmed my worst suspicions. Client retention down 47%, innovation metrics falling, employee turnover at record highs in every department except executive leadership. My phone rang, startling me from my analysis. Unknown number. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Miss Tanaka?" An older woman's voice, refined but direct. "My name is Eleanor. I believe we need to talk about Palmer Innovations." "Who is this?" I asked. "Someone who shares your concerns. I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Are you available for brunch tomorrow?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet at an upscale restaurant downtown. I arrived early, scanning the room until I spotted an elegant, silver-haired woman sitting alone by the window. "Miss Tanaka," she greeted me, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming." "How do you know who I am?" I asked as I sat down. Eleanor smiled. "Because I make it my business to know when someone is trying to save my husband's legacy." My confusion must have shown on my face. "My husband founded Palmer Innovations 35 years ago," she clarified. "While I'm no longer involved in daily operations, I retain significant voting shares and board influence, and I've been watching you for some time." The waiter arrived with coffee. When he left, Eleanor leaned forward. 9 project removals in 3 years, all with the same excuse about culture, she said. "Tell me, Miss Tanaka, what do you think is really happening at Palmer?" I hesitated only briefly before pulling out my tablet. I think the current leadership is systematically dismantling everything your husband built, and I can prove it. Eleanor's eyes sparked with interest. Then perhaps it's time we discuss the future, both yours and Palmer's. As I began sharing my findings, neither of us realized we were being watched from across the restaurant by Kennedy, whose loyalty to Declan was about to be tested in ways none of us anticipated. For 2 hours, Eleanor and I dissected the data. Her sharp questions revealed a mind still razor-focused on business, despite her removed position. This quarterly decline pattern began exactly when the current executive team took control, she noted, tracing the downward trend with a manicured fingernail. The board sees sanitized versions of these reports. They're burying the warning signs, I confirmed. As we finished our meeting, Eleanor fixed me with a penetrating gaze. You've risked your position by gathering this information. Why? I considered my answer carefully. Because the company deserves better than leaders who reject innovation to protect their comfort. Her lips curved slightly. My husband would have appreciated that answer. She stood, collecting her purse. Continue your work, Miss Tanaka. I'll be in touch. 3 days later, I was summoned to Declan's office. Kennedy avoided my eyes as I passed her desk. Close the door, Declan ordered when I entered. His typically smooth demeanor had hardened. I understand you had a meeting with Eleanor Palmer on Sunday. My pulse quickened. That's my personal time. Not when you're discussing company business. He leaned forward. Kennedy saw you showing company data to an outsider. Mrs. Palmer is hardly an outsider, I countered. She has no operational role here. His voice lowered dangerously. Where did you get restricted analytics data? I maintained eye contact. I analyzed publicly available information. Don't insult my intelligence. Declan stood, circling his desk. You're suspended pending investigation into data theft. Security will escort you out. My stomach dropped. On what grounds? You've proven my point about culture fit, May. You're not a team player. As security walked me through the office, I noticed Lena watching with wide eyes. Griffin and Terrence huddled by the coffee machine, smirking. At home, I paced my apartment, calculations running through my mind. I'd expected pushback, but not this quickly. Kennedy had reported our meeting immediately. My phone lit up with a text from Lena. They're searching your workspace. What's happening? Before I could respond, another message arrived from an unknown number. Stand firm. E. Eleanor. 2 tense days passed. On the third morning, my phone rang at 6:15 a.m. Miss Tanaka, this is Victor Nolan, board chairman at Palmer. His deep voice sounded grave. Your presence is requested at an emergency board meeting this morning, 9 o'clock sharp. I'm currently suspended, I reminded him. I'm aware. This supersedes that action. The matter is urgent. When I arrived, security escorted me not to the boardroom, but to a small conference room where Eleanor waited with 3 board members I recognized from company photos. Thank you for coming, Victor said, gesturing toward an empty chair. Eleanor spoke first. I've called this emergency session to address serious concerns about company direction. She nodded toward me. Miss, Tanaka has helped compile troubling evidence that current leadership is endangering Palmer's future. For the next hour, I presented my findings to increasingly disturbed board members. Victor's face darkened as I detailed the pattern of rejected innovations that could have reversed declining performance. Why didn't operations flag these trends? Asked Olivia, the compliance director. Because operations reports directly to the people concealing the problems, I explained. When I finished, the room fell silent until Victor cleared his throat. Miss Tanaka, would you step outside while we discuss? I waited in the hallway, watching employees arrive for the workday, unaware of the earthquake happening in the small conference room. 20 minutes later, Victor opened the door. We've reached a decision, he said gravely. Please come with me. He led me to the executive floor and into the CEO's empty office. Where's Roland? I asked, referring to the current chief executive. Board members are speaking with him now, Victor replied, straightening a picture frame on the wall. The situation required immediate action. My confusion must have shown. Miss Tanaka, the board has unanimously voted to appoint new leadership, he continued. Someone who understands both our challenges and our potential. I stared at him blankly until his meaning registered. You can't mean... Effective immediately, you are appointed Chief Executive Officer of Palmer Innovations. Victor handed me a folder. These documents outline the board's decision and your authority. Eleanor was particularly insistent. My mind raced. The current executive team will report to you now, he finished. They're being notified as we speak. Through the glass walls, I saw Declan storming down the hallway toward us, face contorted with rage. Behind him trailed Phoebe, Griffin, and the others who had systematically removed me from their projects. "What is the meaning of this?" Declan demanded as he burst into the office. "Victor, you can't be serious. She's under investigation. An investigation you manufactured," Victor replied calmly. "The board has reviewed Miss Tanaka's evidence and found your leadership wanting." "This is absurd," Phoebe interjected. "She has no executive experience. Yet she identified problems you either missed or concealed," Victor countered. I stood quietly, watching the realization dawn across their faces as one by one they understood what was happening. Terrence recovered first, so she charmed the founder's widow. That doesn't qualify her to lead this company. "No," I finally spoke. "My qualifications are 9 rejected projects that would have reversed our decline, and the vision to see what you've been hiding." The tension in the room was electric. Griffin looked ready to explode while Phoebe seemed on the verge of tears. Declan simply stared at me with cold hatred. "The board meeting continues at 11, Victor announced. "Miss Tanaka will address the full executive team then." After they left, I sank into the CEO's chair, trembling slightly from adrenaline. "Breathe," Victor advised. "The hard part begins now." He was right. Within hours, I faced a room full of hostile executives who had spent years dismissing me. Standing at the head of the boardroom table, I felt their resentment like a physical force. "I understand this transition is unexpected," I began. "Unexpected?" Declan interrupted. "It's unprecedented and inappropriate." I met his gaze steadily, as was suspending an employee for speaking with a board member. Before he could respond, I distributed folders to everyone present. These contain restructuring plans for each division. You have 2 options. Commit to our renewed values of innovation and accountability, or accept the departure terms on page 4. The room erupted in protests until I raised my hand. "You've made it abundantly clear that I don't fit your culture." I continued once they quieted. "Now you must decide if you can adapt to mine." Griffin slammed his folder shut. "This is nothing but revenge." "No," I corrected him. "This is recovery of Palmer's founding principles and market position." I outlined my immediate priorities: reversing client attrition, implementing 3 of my previously rejected projects, and rebuilding team morale. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide your future with Palmer," I concluded. "Choose wisely." As they filed out, Lena caught my eye from the doorway where she'd been watching. Her slight smile was the first genuine support I'd seen all day. That evening, as I prepared for my first full day as CEO, Kennedy appeared in my doorway. "They're planning something," she said without preamble. I looked up from my notes. "Explain." Declan called an off-site meeting with the others at Terrence's house. "They're coordinating their response." "I expected as much," I replied. "Why are you telling me?" Kennedy stepped fully into the office, closing the door behind her. "Because I've watched you fight for 3 years while they took credit for others' work and buried problems. I'm tired of it." "Yet you told Declan about my meeting with Eleanor." She flinched. "Yes, a decision I regret." I studied her, weighing sincerity against potential deception. "What exactly did you hear them planning?" "Mass resignations designed to cripple operations. They believe you'll fail without their institutional knowledge." I nodded slowly. "Thank you for the warning." After she left, I called Eleanor. "They're planning coordinated resignations." "As we anticipated," she replied calmly. "Are contingency plans in place?" "Yes, but there's something else we need to discuss." I hesitated. "I found irregularities in the financial records that go beyond poor management." Eleanor's voice sharpened. "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that might interest federal regulators." The silence stretched between us. "How certain are you?" she finally asked. "Certain enough that I've secured the evidence." "Proceed carefully, May," she warned. "If what you're suggesting is true, they won't simply resign. They'll fight with everything they have." "I'm counting on it," I replied. The next morning, I arrived early to find Lena waiting outside my office. "You should see this," she said, handing me her tablet. On the screen was an email chain between Declan and the others, discussing ways to undermine my leadership. The final message from Declan read, "Meeting in my office at 8:30. United Front. She'll be gone within a week." "How did you get this?" I asked. Lena's expression was grim. "They included me, thinking I'd side with them. They're gathering in Declan's office right now." I checked my watch. 8:27 a.m. "Perfect timing," I murmured. As I approached Declan's office, their voices carried through the partially open door. "We present our resignations simultaneously," Terrence was saying. "The board will have no choice but to reconsider when they realize she can't run operations without us." "What about legal implications?" Phoebe asked. "There's nothing illegal about resigning," Griffin assured her. "Besides, we've been careful too." I pushed the door open. 9 heads swiveled toward me. "Please, don't let me interrupt," I said pleasantly. "You were discussing resignation strategies?" Declan recovered first. "This is a private meeting. In a company office, on company time, planning coordinated action against company interests?" I shook my head. "That's not how privacy works, Declan." "What do you want?" he demanded. I smiled slightly. "I came to save you the trouble of writing resignation letters." From my portfolio, I withdrew a stack of documents and placed them on his desk. "What are these?" Griffin asked, reaching for them. "Termination notices," I replied, effective immediately. The room erupted in protests. Papers flew as Terrence knocked the stack sideways. "You can't do this," Phoebe gasped, her composure cracking. "The board would never approve mass terminations of the entire executive team." "They already have," I replied calmly, retrieving the scattered documents. "Each termination includes specific performance failures and policy violations. The board reviewed them individually last night." Declan's face reddened. "This is absurd. We built this company into what it is today." "What it is today," I emphasized, "is a company losing market share, hemorrhaging talent, and concealing its decline from stakeholders." Griffin stepped forward, his tall frame looming over me. "You think you can walk in here after 3 days as CEO and destroy careers built over decades?" I held his gaze. "You did that yourselves. I'm merely making it official." Security appeared in the doorway, not the usual building guards, but external specialists hired for this specific purpose. "This is Eric and his team," I introduced. "They'll escort each of you to collect personal belongings before leaving the premises." Phoebe's laugh held a hysterical edge. "You think it's that simple? We built relationships with every major client. They're loyal to us, not Palmer's logo." "An interesting theory," I agreed. "Let's test it. Call any client right now. Tell them you've been terminated for performance issues and want them to follow you elsewhere." Her confidence faltered. "Security will now escort you to your offices. You have 30 minutes to collect personal items. Company devices stay here." As they were led away, Declan remained, watching me with calculated intensity. "You won't last a month," he said quietly after the others left. "You know operations, but nothing about executive leadership." "Ah, perhaps," I conceded. "But unlike you, I recognize what I don't know, and I've already hired people who do." His eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Your replacement started yesterday," I informed him. "External hires with proven track records, plus several internal promotions of people you consistently overlooked." The truth registered in his eyes. "That's why the board moved so quickly. You already had replacements lined up." "Eleanor and I have been planning this transition for months." I glanced at my watch. "Your 30 minutes starts now." As security led him away, his parting words dripped with venom. "This isn't over." He was right. By afternoon, reports came in of executives contacting clients, spreading rumors about company instability. Phoebe had attempted to download client databases before security disabled her access. Griffin had already called 3 industry reporters claiming hostile takeover by an unqualified usurper. I gathered my new leadership team, a mix of external hires and promoted staff who had suffered under the previous regime. "They're fighting back exactly as predicted," I informed them. "Activating client relationships, spreading misinformation, attempting data theft." Lena, now operations director, looked worried. Benning Industries called asking if we're having financial problems. Declan contacted their CEO directly. "Contact each key client personally," I instructed. "Share our growth strategy and the performance data they've never seen. Transparency is our advantage now." "What about the press calls?" asked Jared, our new communications director. "Schedule a media roundtable for tomorrow. We'll address everything directly." As they dispersed, Eleanor called. "The board's receiving concerned calls," she reported. "How are you handling it?" "Exactly as planned," I assured her. "But there's something we need to discuss in person." That evening, I met Eleanor at her home office, a wood-paneled room filled with mementos from Palmer's early days. "You mentioned financial irregularities," she said, dispensing with pleasantries. "Show me." "Ah," I opened my laptop and displayed a series of transactions I'd uncovered. These payments to consultant groups in the Cayman Islands, I explained. They align perfectly with lost contract bids to Westlake Technologies. Eleanor studied the screen, her expression hardening. You're suggesting bid rigging? I'm suggesting the executive team accepted payments to ensure certain contracts went to competitors. I scrolled to another spreadsheet. These shell companies received consulting fees from Palmer while paying personal accounts belonging to Declan, Griffin, and Terrence. Self-dealing, Eleanor murmured. Criminal activity, not just poor management. There's more, I continued. Phoebe approved marketing budgets to agencies that hired her brother's production company at inflated rates. The kickback scheme spans at least 3 years. Eleanor's face had gone pale. Why didn't auditors catch this? The audit partner plays golf with Declan every Sunday. She rose abruptly, pacing the room. The board must be informed immediately. Not yet, I cautioned. If we move too quickly, evidence might disappear. I need time to secure everything properly. How much time? 2 weeks, I replied. They'll be desperate by then, making mistakes. We need to let them believe they still have leverage. As predicted, the counterattack intensified. 3 major clients requested emergency meetings after receiving alarming calls from former executives. Industry blogs published speculation about turmoil at Palmer. My personal history was scrutinized, with anonymous sources questioning my qualifications. Through it all, I maintained a calm public face while working 18-hour days, meeting nervous clients, reassuring employees, and secretly gathering more evidence of the corruption that had rotted Palmer from within. On my 10th day as CEO, Kennedy rushed into my office. They've filed a lawsuit, she announced breathlessly. Wrongful termination. They're demanding reinstatement and damages. I accepted the legal documents with surprising calm. Right on schedule. You expected this? Kennedy looked confused. It's their only play left. I scanned the complaint. They're demanding an emergency hearing tomorrow morning. Our legal team says we need to prepare immediately. I smiled slightly. Tell them not to worry. I'll handle this personally. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I finalized what I'd been building since discovering those first financial discrepancies months ago. A comprehensive map of corruption, self-dealing, and corporate sabotage orchestrated by the very people now suing for wrongful termination. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters the next morning. I arrived early, dressed simply but impeccably, carrying a single expandable folder. Inside, I found all 9 former executives huddled with their attorneys. Declan's smirk when he saw me sent a familiar chill down my spine, the same one I'd felt after each project rejection. Miss Tanaka, their lead attorney, greeted me. We have a few minutes before the judge arrives. Perhaps we could discuss settlement terms? I'm comfortable proceeding to the hearing, I replied. Declan stepped forward. Don't be stupid, May. You fired an entire executive team simultaneously, without proper cause. No judge will uphold that action. We'll see. When Judge Wilson entered, the proceedings began with the plaintiff's attorney outlining the case. Distinguished executives with combined experience of over 150 years, summarily terminated by a new CEO with no executive experience, clearly motivated by personal vendetta. When my turn came, I approached the bench with my folder. Your Honor, rather than make opening remarks, I'd like to submit evidence that renders this case moot. The judge nodded, and I handed over the first document. This is a federal investigation notice served to Palmer Innovations this morning, I explained. The SEC and FBI are investigating securities fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering charges against the plaintiffs. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Declan half rose from his seat before his attorney yanked him back down. The plaintiffs weren't terminated for performance issues, though those existed, I continued. They were terminated for criminal activity discovered during leadership transition. I proceeded to submit evidence of each executive's participation in various schemes: bid rigging, kickbacks, embezzlement through fake consultancies, and market manipulation. Your Honor, these terminations weren't just appropriate. They were legally required once this evidence came to light. The company would face liability had we retained executives engaged in criminal activity. The judge reviewed the documents with increasing alarm. Additionally, I continued, we've learned the plaintiffs attempted to destroy evidence after termination. Federal agents are executing search warrants at their residences as we speak. The courtroom erupted. Through the chaos, I caught Declan's eye. The hatred there had transformed into something else: fear. Judge Wilson banged his gavel repeatedly until order returned. "This hearing is adjourned," he announced. "Given the pending federal investigation, this civil matter is stayed until criminal proceedings are resolved." Outside, reporters swarmed as the former executives hurried to waiting cars, jackets pulled over their heads. "Miss Tanaka," a reporter called, "did you know about the criminal activity when you became CEO?" I faced the cameras calmly. Palmer Innovations has always stood for integrity and innovation. When those values were compromised, the board took decisive action. We're cooperating fully with authorities and focused on rebuilding our company's legacy. Back at the office, my new executive team waited anxiously. When I entered the conference room, they fell silent. "The lawsuit is effectively dead," I announced. "But we have challenging work ahead rebuilding what they damaged." "The clients?" Lena asked. "We retain them through transparency," I replied. "Share everything, the good and bad, and our plan to improve." Over the following weeks, Palmer transformed. Innovative projects previously shelved were fast-tracked. Talented employees who had been overlooked received recognition and advancement. Clients who had considered leaving renewed contracts after seeing our new direction. 3 months after becoming CEO, I received the final communication I'd been waiting for: formal indictments against all 9 former executives on multiple federal charges. The evidence I'd meticulously gathered over months had proven overwhelming. That evening, I stood alone in my office, watching the sunset paint the city skyline. Eleanor joined me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "A celebration seems appropriate," she said, offering me one. "For the indictments?" "For the company's recovery." She gestured toward the quarterly report on my desk. First growth quarter in 3 years. Client retention up 18%. Employee satisfaction scores at record highs. I accepted the glass. "That's the real victory. My husband would be proud," Eleanor said quietly. "Not of the revenge, though I admit that was satisfying, but of how you've restored Palmer's soul." "It wasn't revenge," I corrected her gently. "It was justice." "Is there a difference?" I considered this, watching light play across the glass buildings. Revenge would have been simply firing them. Justice was exposing the truth that they now face prison terms while you run their company. Eleanor's eyes twinkled. I smiled at last. "Well, perhaps there's a small element of poetic justice." We clinked glasses as my phone buzzed with an incoming message, a news alert showing Declan being led into federal court in handcuffs. 9 times they removed me from projects claiming I didn't fit their culture, I murmured. They never realized they were the ones who didn't fit the culture this company was built on. "To culture," Eleanor toasted, "and to finally having the right person define it." As I sipped my champagne, I felt not the burning satisfaction of revenge, but something more lasting. The quiet pride of restoration. 9 rejections had led to this moment, not because I'd plotted vengeance, but because I'd refused to abandon what was right. Have you ever stood your ground when everyone said you didn't belong? Have you witnessed corruption hiding behind words like culture and fit? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, subscribe for more narratives about perseverance and justice. Remember, sometimes the path to leadership isn't about fitting in. It's about having the courage to stand out. I stared at my computer screen, reading the same hollow phrases for the 5th time in 3 months. Each word burned into my retinas like acid dripping on exposed nerves. "Thank you for your interest. Impressive qualifications. Selected another candidate whose experience better aligns with our current needs. 5 different departments. 5 identical rejections." The cursor blinked mockingly as I scrolled through my sent items folder, examining each application: marketing specialist, strategic planner, content development, project management, customer insights analyst. All positions I could perform blindfolded after 10 years in the industry, an advanced degree, and consistent praise from previous employers. My phone pinged with a calendar notification. Interview follow-up, Benson. The HR representative who'd smiled too widely during my last interview, whose eyes had traveled down my blouse when he thought I was reviewing the portfolio I'd brought. The same man who'd said, "You're exactly what we're looking for," before the panel of 5 men nodding in agreement. Lies. Something snapped inside me. I dialed the company's main number, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "Human resources, please. I'd like to schedule an in-person meeting with Benson." 3 hours later, I sat across from him in a small conference room. His surprise when I walked in had been almost comical. "Iris," he said, recovering quickly, "what can I help you with today?" I placed my laptop on the table and turned it toward him, displaying all 5 rejection emails side by side. "What's really happening here?" My voice was quiet but clear. "I'm not sure what you mean," he said, his eyes darting to my screen. 5 positions, 5 rejections, each with identical wording. I've scored at the top of every assessment. I have 10 years of relevant experience. I have an advanced degree. So please, explain to me what's really happening. Benson's smile tightened. Different hiring managers have different hiring managers all reaching the same conclusion about me? What are the odds of that, Benson? A woman passing by the glass-walled room slowed, watching our exchange with undisguised interest. "I'm afraid I can't discuss internal hiring decisions," he said, standing abruptly. "Perhaps this position simply isn't the right fit for you." "Which position, Benson?" I applied to 5 different ones. His face flushed. "I think we're done here." As he reached for the door, I asked, "How many women have you hired this year at the management level?" He froze, hand on the doorknob. Without turning around, he said, "That information is confidential. Is it because there aren't any?" The door closed behind him with a soft click that echoed in my chest like thunder. The woman who had been watching approached as I gathered my things. She slipped a business card across the table. "Zoe Parker, Legal Department," she whispered. "Call my personal number. Not here. Not now." I nodded, tucking the card into my pocket as she walked away. Outside, rain pelted the pavement, matching the storm brewing inside me. I had come seeking answers but left with only more questions and a mysterious card burning in my pocket. What was Zoe risking by reaching out? And what would I discover when I called her? The subway ride home was a blur of faces and noise, my mind replaying each interview, each interaction, searching for clues I might have missed. Had I been too qualified? Too confident? Too female? My phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "Did you get what you needed?" Before I could respond, another message appeared. "They're watching. Be careful what you put in writing." If you're feeling that knot in your stomach right now, if you're sensing there's more to this story than meets the eye, you're right. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey of discovery and justice. Trust me, what happens next changed everything. Not just for me, but for hundreds of women whose voices had been silenced. My name is Iris Lynn. I'm 34, with a master's degree in business administration and a reputation for solving problems others can't see. I specialize in data analysis and organizational behavior, skills that made me invaluable to previous employers, but apparently threatening to this one. Growing up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to put me through college taught me 2 things. Injustice is everywhere, and fighting it requires strategy, not just passion. That night, I called Zoe from a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment. "I've been watching you apply," she said without preamble. "You're the 6th woman with outstanding qualifications they've rejected this quarter. Why are you telling me this?" A pause. "Because I'm leaving. 3 weeks' notice. I can't fight it anymore." "Fight what exactly?" "The boys' club. The glass ceiling. Whatever you want to call it." Her voice dropped. "They hired Thomas as senior counsel last month. He graduated 2 years after me, has half my case record, and they're paying him 30% more." I jotted notes as she continued. "The last woman to make director was Anya. She quit after they excluded her from meetings, assigned her impossible deadlines, then questioned her commitment when she couldn't meet them. Why doesn't anyone file complaints?" Zoe laughed bitterly. 3 women did last year, all pushed out within months. Coincidentally, of course. "Of course," I echoed. "Listen, there's more. Check their leadership page. 28 executives, 26 men, 2 women, both in HR and communications. Their annual report brags about diversity initiatives, but the numbers tell the truth." After hanging up, I researched deeper. The company's social media showcased smiling women at company events, but a closer examination revealed most were administrative staff or junior associates. I created a spreadsheet tracking job postings against new hire announcements, noting gender patterns. The data was unmistakable. Women were interviewed but rarely hired above middle management. 2 days later, I developed a 3-part strategy. First, I applied for a small contractor position through an agency, using only my initials instead of my first name. Second, I launched an anonymous industry blog analyzing market trends, showcasing my expertise while building credibility. Third, I began attending industry events where board members would be present, The contractor position interview was scheduled quickly. I arrived wearing a tailored pantsuit, hair pulled back severely. The interviewer blinked in surprise when I entered. Lynn, we were expecting Iris Lynn, I confirmed, extending my hand. Shall we begin? His discomfort was palpable as I methodically addressed each question with precision and authority. By the end, his expression had shifted from surprise to reluctant respect. Your technical knowledge is impressive, he admitted. Thank you. When can I expect your decision? Soon. Very soon. Meanwhile, my blog gained traction. I published detailed analyses of industry challenges and solutions, carefully avoiding any mention of specific companies, but demonstrating deep understanding of the field. At my first industry function, I approached Wilson, a board member known for his progressive views. Your quarterly report indicates a 17% efficiency gap in your Eastern operations, I said after introducing myself. His eyebrows rose. You've read our quarterly report? I read all public documents from major industry players. May I offer an observation? By the end of our conversation, he was asking for my card. We need fresh perspectives like yours. The following week, I attended a charity gala where several board members were present. I strategically positioned myself at their table during dinner, contributing thoughtful comments to their discussion about market challenges. Diana, the only female board member, studied me with interest. You speak as if you've been inside our operations. Just an analyst who pays attention, I replied. 6 weeks into my plan, disaster struck. The agency called to inform me the contractor position had been eliminated due to budget constraints. The same day, my blog received a cease and desist letter claiming I had used proprietary information, a baseless accusation meant to silence me. Then Wilson, who had been particularly supportive, stopped returning my messages. That evening, as rain lashed against my windows, doubts flooded my mind. Was I fighting a losing battle? Was I risking my professional reputation for nothing? My phone pinged with an anonymous message. Keep going. You're making them nervous. The sender's identity remained unknown, but the message reignited my determination. If they were trying to stop me, I must be on the right track. I pivoted my approach. Fighting alone from the outside wasn't working. I needed allies. Through Zoe's connections, I reached out to 3 other women who had experienced similar rejections. Vera, a marketing strategist with 15 years of experience. Kaya, a financial analyst with 2 published papers on industry optimization. And Liv, a former employee who had left after being passed over for promotion 3 times. We met at my apartment, spreading our documents across my dining table. They interviewed me 4 times, Vera said. Each time, they hired a man with fewer qualifications. Kaya nodded. Same pattern. They love my ideas but never quite find me the right fit. Liv added. When I asked why I wasn't promoted, my manager said I lacked leadership presence, whatever that means. Together, we formulated a new strategy. Rather than trying to break in individually, we would apply pressure collectively. We began attending shareholder meetings, asking pointed questions about hiring statistics. Your annual report mentions commitment to diversity, yet management remains 93% male. Could you explain this discrepancy? We created presentation decks comparing the company's public diversity claims against actual numbers, sending them anonymously to board members and industry publications. The pressure was building, but would it be enough to crack the foundation of bias that had stood firm for decades? The company's first response came 3 weeks later, a carefully worded press release announcing a new Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. The announcement featured stock photos of smiling people from various backgrounds alongside empty promises of comprehensive review and commitment to improvement. They're playing defense, Liv said during our strategy meeting in my apartment. Rain tapped against the windows as we huddled around my kitchen table, the scent of coffee mingling with the tension in the air. This means we're getting to them. Kaya analyzed the financial reports spread before her. Their stock dipped 3% after our questions at the shareholder meeting. Small, but board members noticed these things. Not enough, Vera said, tapping her pen against her notepad. They'll form this task force, assign some junior people to it, issue a report in 6 months claiming improvement, and nothing will actually change. I studied our timeline on the whiteboard. We need to accelerate. The annual leadership conference is in 3 weeks. Every executive and board member will be there, along with potential investors and industry press, Liv added. Perfect, I said, my mind already forming a plan. We spent the next week preparing detailed, data-driven packets comparing the company's hiring patterns against industry standards. We included anonymous testimonials from current and former female employees, statistics on productivity and innovation in diverse versus homogeneous teams, and concrete recommendations for improvement. Remember, I cautioned as we finalized our materials, this isn't about attacking them. It's about showing them a better way forward, one that benefits everyone, including their bottom line. The night before the conference, doubts crept in as I laid awake staring at my ceiling. What if this backfired? What if they found ways to discredit us? What if this ended with all of us blacklisted in the industry? My phone buzzed with a text from Kaya. Nervous? Terrified, I replied honestly. Good. Means we're doing something important. The conference venue gleamed with polished marble and ambient lighting, people in expensive suits networking over mimosas and tiny quiches. We arrived separately, dressed professionally, name badges displaying our affiliations with various industry organizations rather than our own consultancy we'd hastily formed. Liv positioned herself near the registration desk, monitoring arrivals. CEO just walked in with the executive team, she murmured into her earpiece. Board members at the northwest entrance. Vera approached the event coordinator, pressing our revised proposal into her hands. The CEO requested this be added to the presentation materials for the innovation panel. The coordinator looked confused. This wasn't on the schedule. Last-minute addition, Vera said confidently. He was quite insistent. Meanwhile, I navigated toward Diana, the female board member who had shown interest in my analysis at the gala. Miss Lynn, she said, recognition lighting her eyes. I didn't expect to see you here. I wouldn't miss it, I replied, especially given the company's recent announcement about diversity initiatives. Something flickered across her face. Doubt? Guilt? Yes, we're making progress in that area. Are you? I asked softly, holding her gaze. The numbers suggest otherwise. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at me with narrowed eyes. Excuse me. Through my earpiece, Kaya whispered, they found the packets. Executive team huddling near the east hallway. Our materials had been strategically placed throughout the venue, on reserved seats for board members, at the press table, and in the investor lounge. Each contained irrefutable data about the company's hiring practices, pay disparities, and toxic culture. The CEO's face had turned an alarming shade of red as he flipped through the pages, surrounded by nervous-looking executives. He scanned the room, perhaps searching for whoever had distributed the information. I felt a hand on my elbow. Turning, I found Benson from HR, his expression a mask of forced pleasantry. Miss Lynn, what a surprise. I wasn't aware you were attending today. Professional development, I said with a smile that matched his insincerity, always looking to stay current. Indeed. His grip tightened slightly. Perhaps we could chat privately? I believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding your applications. A flutter of hope. Was this working already? I quashed it immediately, recognizing the tactic. Isolation. Any discussions about my applications should happen formally, with witnesses, I replied loud enough for nearby attendees to glance our way. Unless, of course, there's something you wouldn't want others to hear? I replied. His smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. I'm simply trying to clear up a potential misunderstanding. 5 identical rejections doesn't sound like a misunderstanding to me, Benson. It sounds like a pattern. People were watching now, curiosity piqued. This isn't the appropriate venue, he began. When is the appropriate venue? After how many qualified women are rejected? After how many complaints are buried? After how many careers are damaged? The CEO approached, his face composed but eyes blazing. Is there a problem here? No problem, I said calmly. Just discussing your company's hiring practices. Have you had a chance to review the materials we prepared? The data is quite compelling. His jaw tightened. I don't know what game you're playing. It's not a game, I interrupted. It's people's lives and careers, and it's your company's reputation and potential. Diana joined our growing circle, along with 2 other board members. What materials are you referring to? She asked. I nodded toward the packet in the CEO's hand. The comprehensive analysis of how this company systematically excludes women from leadership positions while publicly claiming to value diversity. A journalist hovered nearby, pretending not to listen while typing rapidly on her phone. The CEO's smile was glacial. Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately. I think that's an excellent idea, said Diana, surprising everyone. In fact, I'd like to convene an emergency board meeting. Now. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. The board commandeered a conference room, calling in members who weren't physically present. Vera, Kaya, Liv, and I presented our findings methodically, answering questions with data rather than accusations. Some board members were defensive, others shocked, a few seemingly unsurprised. The CEO alternated between dismissive and threatening, while Benson sat stone-faced, occasionally whispering to the company's legal counsel. "This is preposterous," the CEO finally exploded. "These women are disgruntled applicants trying to damage our reputation because they weren't hired." Diana leaned forward. "The question isn't whether we're being attacked, Gregory. The question is whether the accusations have merit." "Our hiring practices are completely fair," Benson insisted. "Then you won't mind an independent audit," I suggested. "Absolutely not," the CEO snapped. "We're not subjecting ourselves to some witch hunt based on cherry-picked data." "Afraid of what they'll find?" Liv asked quietly. The tension in the room was suffocating when Diana spoke again. "I move that we engage an independent firm to review our hiring practices and corporate culture." "Seconded," said Wilson, surprising me after his earlier silence. "This is completely unnecessary," the CEO protested. "Our internal processes have clearly failed," Diana interrupted. "The vote is 7-2 in favor. The audit proceeds." Outside the conference room, Vera squeezed my hand. "First victory," she whispered. But our celebration was premature. The following week, the company announced they had selected an audit firm, one known for its close relationships with major corporations and management-friendly findings. "They're rigging the game," Kaya said when we met to strategize. That evening, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, I saw Diana standing alone in the hallway. I opened the door cautiously. "This is unexpected. May I come in?" she asked, glancing down the corridor. Inside, she declined my offer of tea, pacing my small living room instead. "They're preparing to bury this," she said without preamble. "The audit will find areas for improvement, but no systemic issues. The CEO is already drafting a response claiming vindication." My heart sank. "You seem well informed. I've been on this board 5 years. Do you know how I got there? I was the token woman they needed for optics after a similar complaint years ago." Her eyes met mine. I told myself I could change things from the inside. Instead, I've watched dozens of qualified women get passed over while nodding along with the excuses. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm tired of being complicit." She handed me a flash drive. Internal communications about hiring decisions for the past 3 years. Performance reviews, salary data, everything you need. I stared at the small device. "This could cost you your position." "It already has. I submitted my resignation this morning." She moved toward the door. "What you do with that information is up to you. But whatever it is, I suggest you do it quickly. They're mobilizing against you." The implications hit me as soon as she left. She had just handed me evidence of potentially illegal hiring practices and painted a target on my back. I called an emergency meeting with my allies, explaining the situation. "We have 2 choices," I said. "We can take this to the press, blow the whistle publicly, or what?" Vera asked, eyes fixed on the flash drive sitting on my coffee table like a live grenade. "We could try something unexpected," I said slowly, an idea forming, something they would never anticipate. "What exactly did you have in mind?" Liv leaned forward, intrigued. "What if, instead of attacking them, we offered to help them?" I suggested. Kaya frowned. "Help the people who rejected all of us?" "Not help them cover this up," I clarified. "Help them actually fix the problem." "Why would we do that?" Vera asked. "And why would they let us?" I smiled, the pieces of a new plan falling into place. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation, on our terms. Little did I know then how our quest for justice would evolve, or the formidable obstacles still ahead. The company's resistance would prove more entrenched than we imagined, and the personal cost higher than any of us expected. But in that moment, looking at these 3 brilliant women who had joined me in this fight, I felt something I hadn't experienced since opening that 5th rejection letter: hope. What none of us realized was that someone inside the company was already working to undermine us, someone with far more to lose than just their reputation. And they wouldn't stop at merely discrediting us. The next morning, I woke to breaking news that would change everything. The notification on my phone jolted me awake at 5:17 a.m. Squinting at the screen, I saw a news alert. Industry leader announces restructuring amid allegations of discriminatory practices. Fully alert now, I opened the article to find the company's official statement. In response to concerns raised about our hiring practices, we are undertaking a comprehensive restructuring of our talent acquisition processes. We have also become aware of potentially fraudulent activities by external parties attempting to manipulate our hiring decisions for personal gain. We take these matters seriously and are investigating fully. My phone immediately erupted with texts from Vera, Kaya, and Liv. All had seen the statement. All recognized the implied threat. "They're painting us as criminals," Vera wrote. "Classic deflection," responded Kaya. Liv's message was more alarming. "My apartment was broken into last night. Laptop missing. Nothing else taken." A chill ran through me as I scanned my own apartment. Everything appeared untouched, but I suddenly felt exposed. I checked the flash drive Diana had given me, still safely hidden inside a hollowed-out book on my shelf. By 7 a.m., we had convened at a small cafe 3 neighborhoods away from any of our homes. "This changes everything," Liv said, dark circles under her eyes. "They're not just defending themselves anymore. They're attacking. And they have resources we don't," added Vera. "Legal teams, security, connections." Kaya drummed her fingers on the table. "The fraudulent activities claim is concerning. They could be building a case against us. Or it could be a bluff," I suggested, though without much conviction. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. Urgent." The message in my inbox was brief. "They're searching for the flash drive. Diana is being questioned. Lawyer up. Zoe. Still working on the inside. We need to accelerate," I said, showing them the message. "They're trying to control the narrative before we can act." "But what exactly is our play now?" Vera asked. "Go public with what we have? That just confirms their claims that we're attacking them." I considered our options. No, we stick with the plan, but we modify it. Instead of offering to help them quietly, we make a public proposal they can't refuse without looking worse. Over the next 4 hours, we crafted a detailed proposal for what we called the Industry Equity Initiative, a comprehensive program to address bias in hiring practices, not just at this company but across the industry. We positioned ourselves as consultants with specialized expertise in organizational behavior and inclusive talent development. Rather than accusing the company directly, we presented data on industry-wide patterns, using their statistics as just one example among many. We emphasized the business benefits of diverse leadership teams, innovation, adaptability, profitability, with research citations backing every claim. Most critically, we created a press release announcing our initiative, naming several companies we were in discussions with, including our target. "This puts them in a bind," I explained. "Deny our involvement, and they look resistant to improvement. Accept it, and they have to actually work with us." "Clever," Kaya nodded, "but risky. What if they sue us for defamation?" "The release doesn't make accusations," I pointed out. "It simply states we're discussing potential collaboration, and everything else is factual data available in public records." We were preparing to send out our materials when Liv's phone rang. Her face paled as she answered. "It's my former manager," she whispered, covering the microphone. "He says the company wants to meet." The timing couldn't be coincidental. How did they know what we were planning? After a brief conversation, Liv hung up. "They want all 4 of us to come in tomorrow morning. The CEO will be there." "It's a trap," Vera said immediately. "Maybe," I conceded. "But it's also an opportunity. They're worried enough to invite us in. Or they want to threaten us face to face," Kaya countered. We debated for an hour before reaching a decision. We would attend, but on our terms. We'd meet in a neutral location, not their offices. We'd bring our own recording devices. And most importantly, we'd send our press release to key industry publications with an embargo. If we didn't confirm by a specific time tomorrow, the story would go live. That night, I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., I heard a noise outside my apartment door. Footsteps paused, then continued past. Paranoia or actual surveillance? Impossible to know. The meeting was set for 9 a.m. at a downtown hotel conference room. We arrived early, swept the room for listening devices, finding none, and positioned ourselves strategically, backs to walls, facing the door, recording apps activated on phones placed casually on the table. At precisely 9 a.m., the door opened. The CEO entered first, followed by Benson from HR, 2 people I assumed were legal counsel, and surprisingly, Diana. "Thank you for coming," the CEO began with practiced cordiality. "We wanted to address some concerning activities directly." "Such as?" I asked, matching his professional tone. "Let's not play games, Miss Lin," Benson cut in. We know you've been coordinating efforts to damage this company's reputation. Actually, Vera interjected, we've been researching industry-wide hiring patterns and their impact on business performance. Your company is just one data point in our analysis. The CEO's smile tightened. And this analysis conveniently began after you were all rejected for positions? Research often starts with personal experience, Kaya replied calmly. That doesn't invalidate the findings. Diana hadn't spoken yet, but I noticed her watching me intently. She gave an almost imperceptible nod toward one of the lawyers, the younger woman whose hands were clasped too tightly on the table. We understand you may have concerns, this lawyer said, her voice surprisingly gentle. But attempting to pressure a company through threats and stolen data isn't the appropriate channel. What's stolen data? I asked innocently. The CEO leaned forward. We know about the flash drive, Miss Lin. So that was their play. Trap us into admitting we had confidential information. I'm not sure what you're referring to, I said. All our research uses publicly available information. Frustration flickered across his face. Let's be direct. We're prepared to offer all of you settlements in exchange for confidentiality agreements and the return of all company data in your possession. There it was, the bribe. How generous, Liv said coldly. And what exactly would we be keeping confidential? Your systematic exclusion of qualified women from leadership positions? These are unsubstantiated allegations, Benson began. Actually, I interrupted. They're thoroughly substantiated and documented and ready for publication, unless we can reach a more constructive agreement. Blackmail? The second lawyer asked. Negotiation, I corrected. We're not interested in settlements or confidentiality agreements. We're interested in actual change. I slid copies of our Industry Equity Initiative proposal across the table. This is our counteroffer. We establish an independent advisory board to review and improve hiring practices, not just at your company, but industry-wide. You become the first corporate partner, demonstrating leadership in addressing a problem that affects the entire sector. The CEO glanced at the proposal, then pushed it away. This is absurd. You want us to hire you after this stunt? Not hire us, Kaya clarified. Partner with us. There's a difference. And if we refuse? Asked the second lawyer. I checked my watch. Our press release goes live in 20 minutes. Your choice, whether it positions you as part of the problem or part of the solution. The tension in the room was palpable as the CEO conferred in whispers with his team. Diana remained silent, her expression unreadable. Finally, the CEO turned back to us. We need more time to review this proposal. The press embargo expires in 18 minutes now, I reminded him. This is coercion, Benson hissed. This is consequences, I replied evenly. The younger lawyer whispered something to the CEO, who looked increasingly cornered. Fine, he snapped finally. We'll participate in your initiative as founding partners, but we have conditions. So do we, I responded. What followed was 15 minutes of intense negotiation, resulting in a framework agreement that would establish the Industry Equity Initiative with independent oversight, transparent reporting, and accountability measures. As we all stood to leave, Diana finally spoke. I'll be serving as board liaison to this initiative, she announced, surprising even the CEO, given my resignation was never formally accepted. Outside the hotel, we maintained our composure until turning the corner, then broke into breathless laughter and tears. Did that just happen? Liv asked incredulously. It happened, I confirmed, still processing the magnitude of what we'd accomplished. But will they actually follow through? Vera wondered. They'll have to, Kaya said. We've got the agreement in writing, witnesses, and recordings. Plus, I added, checking my phone, I just confirmed with our media contacts. The release is live, but with the updated information about the partnership. 3 months later, I stood at a podium addressing the company's quarterly all-hands meeting, not as an outside consultant, but as the newly appointed Executive Director of Organizational Development. The journey to this moment had been neither simple nor straightforward. The initial agreement had nearly collapsed twice. Anonymous threats had been sent to all 4 of us. Industry competitors had tried to undermine the initiative, but we had persevered, backed by data, determination, and growing public support. Today marks a new chapter, I began, surveying the sea of faces before me. 3 months ago, I stood outside these doors, repeatedly rejected despite my qualifications. Today, I stand here to ensure that talent, not gender, determines opportunity. My gaze found Benson in the crowd, now demoted to Associate HR Manager. Beside him sat the hiring managers who had rejected me 5 times. They avoided my eyes. This initiative isn't about retribution, I continued. It's about transformation, about building a company that truly embodies the values it claims to uphold. In the front row sat Vera, now heading the new talent acquisition team. Kaya had been appointed to lead data analytics for the initiative. Liv was developing training programs for management. The audit results released today confirm what some have long suspected. Systemic barriers existed that prevented qualified women from advancing. Those barriers are now being dismantled. Diana, who had emerged as our strongest ally on the board, nodded approvingly. The revenge some expected me to seek isn't in punishment or public humiliation, I said, lowering my voice slightly. It's in the 73% increase in female applicants for leadership positions. It's in the new mentorship program connecting senior women with emerging talent. It's in the pay equity adjustments implemented last month. I paused, letting my words sink in. And it's in the face of every woman in this room who now sees a path forward that wasn't visible before. The CEO shifted uncomfortably in his seat as I continued. Change isn't easy. Some resist it, some resent it, but the data is undeniable. Diverse teams perform better. Inclusive companies innovate faster. Equitable workplaces attract top talent. I gestured toward the screen behind me, where our latest metrics were displayed. Since implementing these changes, employee satisfaction has increased 12%. Productivity is up, turnover is down. By every measurable standard, this company is stronger today than it was 3 months ago. Looking directly at the men who had rejected me, I delivered the final blow, not with anger, but with calm certainty. The greatest revenge against a broken system isn't breaking it further. It's rebuilding it better. It's standing in the position you were told you couldn't have, not to gloat, but to hold the door open for others. The applause began tentatively, then swelled, first from the women in the audience, then spreading until even some of those who had resisted our efforts joined in. As I gathered my notes, the CEO approached the podium. "Thank you, Iris," he said, the words clearly costing him. "Your perspective has been valuable." I smiled, knowing his acknowledgement came not from a change of heart but from the undeniable results on the quarterly reports. "Results speak for themselves," I replied quietly, "and we're just getting started." Walking back to my office, the same corner office once occupied by men who had rejected me, I felt not the bitter satisfaction I had once craved, but something more profound. The system that had tried to exclude me was now under my influence, changing from within. If you've ever faced rejection that felt unfair, if you've ever suspected the playing field wasn't level, I hope this story inspires you to look deeper, gather your evidence, and find constructive ways to create change. The greatest victories don't come from tearing others down, but from building something better in place of what was broken. Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories about transforming obstacles into opportunities. Because sometimes, the most powerful response to no is not anger, but innovation. We've decided to move forward without you, Amelia. The team feels your vision no longer aligns with our growth trajectory, Hudson said, leaning back in his chair as if we were discussing the weather instead of destroying 12 years of my life's work. "The team?" I repeated, my voice barely audible. "You mean the team I built? The people I hired and trained?" "Look, business evolves. You've been distracted with your mother's illness. We need someone who's fully committed." He slid a folder across the table. "This is a fair severance package. 2 months' salary. Standard non-compete clause. Your personal items are being packed as we speak." I stared at him. This man who'd been my business partner since graduation, the man who'd stood beside me as we landed our first client, who'd toasted my promotion ideas that had doubled our growth 3 years running. "This isn't a discussion, Amelia. The decision's been made." The board vote was unanimous. "Unanimous?" My voice cracked. "Even Talia? My closest ally, my friend who'd been there from the beginning." Hudson's silence was my answer. "When did this vote happen?" "Tuesday, while you were at your mother's treatment." The room spun. Tuesday. When I'd texted them from the hospital waiting room about my new campaign idea for Blue Way. When Talia had responded with a thumbs-up emoji and "We've got everything covered here." I stood on wobbly legs. "I built half this company. Our biggest clients came because of my strategies, and we appreciate your past contributions." He checked his watch. "Security will escort you out." for everyone's comfort. My throat closed as I saw Pat from security hovering in the doorway. I'd attended his daughter's ballet recital last month. Hudson, you can't just. We can and we have. Look, don't make this ugly. You're talented, you'll land somewhere. Just not with any of our clients. Per the non-compete. As Pat led me down the hallway past averted gazes and hushed whispers, I glimpsed Talia ducking into a conference room. Our eyes met for half a second before she looked away. Through the glass walls, I saw them waiting. Hudson, Ren, and Brielle, my former partners, sitting together with champagne flutes in hand. I was outside on the sidewalk before I realized they'd already changed the door codes. 12 years erased in 12 minutes. What I didn't know then, standing there clutching a cardboard box of desk plants and coffee mugs, was that this wasn't just an ending. It was the first move in a game I would spend 12 years learning how to win. Wow, I can see you're still reading this. If you've ever felt betrayed or underestimated, you know exactly how Amelia felt in that moment. Hit the like button if you've ever wanted to prove someone wrong who hurt you, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, what Amelia does next is something you don't want to miss. My name is Amelia Gray, and before that day, I had been the creative strategy director at what was then called Gray Hudson Park Associates. Yes, my name was on the door. Or it had been until I returned from the parking garage to find a maintenance worker, already removing the vinyl lettering. People in our industry knew me as the idea person, the one who could walk into a failing business and spot the one unique thing they could leverage to turn everything around. I wasn't just good at my job, I lived for it. Every client success felt personal. Every campaign launch gave me the same thrill as the first time I'd seen my work on a billboard downtown. I'd met Hudson Park in college. We were both ambitious business majors with big dreams and empty bank accounts. I had the creative vision, he had the confidence and connections. We graduated and spent 2 years working at established firms before deciding to strike out on our own. Hudson brought in Ren Willis, an old family friend with investor connections, and later Brielle Tanner joined with her technical expertise. Together, we built something special. Our boutique business strategy firm quickly developed a reputation for transforming struggling companies into success stories. By year 5, we had a waiting list of clients and a team of 20 talented people working under us. My specialties were retail and hospitality, businesses where customer experience made all the difference. I developed a process that identified emotional connection points in customer journeys. When properly leveraged, these connections built fierce loyalty and word-of-mouth growth that no advertising budget could match. The signs of trouble started small. Meetings rescheduled when I was supposed to present. Client emails mysteriously rerouted to Hudson's inbox instead of mine. Comments about my unconventional approaches that had once been compliments now delivered with slight frowns. Then my mother got sick. Aggressive cancer. The kind that doesn't wait for convenient timing. I started flying to Arizona every other weekend for her treatments. I worked remotely, joining meetings through video calls from hospital waiting rooms, working on proposals until 3 a.m. after spending days at her bedside. Take the time you need, Hudson had said. Family comes first. I believed him. That was my first mistake. After being escorted from the building, I called Talia immediately. Her voicemail picked up. I tried her personal number. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "What happened? Please talk to me." 3 hours later, her response, "I'm sorry. It wasn't personal. They said if I didn't vote with them, I'd be next." I spent that night in shock, sitting on my apartment floor, surrounded by framed awards our firm had won based on my campaigns. The next morning, I pulled myself together and called our biggest client, Andover Retail Group. "I'm sorry, Amelia," their marketing director said awkwardly. "We've been informed that Hudson will be handling our account moving forward." I tried another client, then another. Same response each time. By week's end, I'd updated my resume and begun applying for positions at other firms. I had an impressive portfolio and industry recognition. Finding a new job would be straightforward, or so I thought. The first interview went well until the final question. Just curious, why did you leave Grey Hudson Park? I gave a diplomatic answer about seeking new challenges. The interviewer nodded, but I never heard back. This pattern repeated 6 times at 6 different companies. On the 7th interview, with a small agency downtown, the owner was more direct. Look, Amelia, your work is outstanding, but I got a call yesterday. Hudson Park said you violated client confidentiality agreements and attempted to poach clients on your way out. He said hiring you would be a liability. My stomach lurched. That's completely false. She shrugged sympathetically. Maybe, but this industry runs on relationships and reputation. I can't risk it. I can't risk it. That night, I discovered they'd contacted every major player in the regional business community. The message was clear. Amelia Gray is poison. Don't touch her. I sold my car first. Then my designer clothes on resale apps. I downgraded from my downtown apartment to a tiny studio in the outskirts. I took contract work under the table, helping small businesses too small to be on my former partner's radar. Months turned into a year. I watched from the sidelines as my former company continued using my strategies. They even won an award for a campaign concept I'd developed before they pushed me out. In the acceptance photos, Hudson held the trophy while Brielle and Ren beamed beside him. No mention of where the idea originated. My mother died 18 months after I was forced out. At her funeral, standing alone as distant relatives offered awkward condolences, I realized I'd reached my lowest point. I had no career, dwindling savings, and now I'd lost the only person who'd always believed in me. That night in my cheap motel room near the funeral home, something shifted inside me. I was done being a victim. If the big agencies wouldn't hire me, I'd build something new, something they couldn't touch. I started with the smallest clients possible, local businesses too tiny for my former partners to notice or care about. A family-owned bakery struggling to compete with chain stores. A childcare center trying to fill enrollment gaps. I worked for trade, bread, free babysitting hours while I used their office space after hours. I created a new approach, focusing on community connection points that big agencies overlooked. The bakery started hosting monthly events, showcasing local artists, becoming a neighborhood hub. The childcare center partnered with senior centers for intergenerational programs that drew media attention. Slowly, carefully, I rebuilt. A coffee shop owner who loved my work referred me to his brother who owned 3 car washes. Success there led to a small regional chain of pet supply stores. I operated under the radar, never taking credit publicly, building a network of business owners who shared one thing. They'd all been ignored by larger agencies like my former firm. 5 years after being pushed out, I was making enough to rent a small office space. I hired my first employee, Danny, a recent graduate with brilliant ideas but no industry connections. I recognized myself in her hunger to prove herself. "Why are we calling it New Vision Partners?" she asked on her first day. "Why not use your name? You're the reason clients come to us. If you also," I showed her the non-compete clause I'd signed under duress. "For 2 more years, I can't openly compete with them using my name. Besides, this isn't about me anymore. It's about building something better." 7 years in, we had 5 employees and a growing reputation among small to mid-sized businesses. Our approach, focusing on authentic community connections and emotional customer experiences, was generating results that traditional advertising couldn't match. Then came the pivotal moment, the one that would eventually bring everything full circle. A regional retailer with 30 locations was struggling against online competition. Their marketing director had worked with me years before at a different company, before the blacklisting. She remembered my work and reached out secretly. "My boss wants to hire Grey Hudson Park," she admitted. "They handle all our competitors." But I told him I know someone better. It was our biggest opportunity yet. If we succeeded, other mid-sized companies would notice. If we failed, my former partners would make sure everyone heard about it. "We need this account," Danny said during our strategy session. "But their budget expectations are based on what they'd pay Grey Hudson Park." Then we'll deliver twice the value at the same price, I decided. We'll show them what real innovation looks like. We worked around the clock for 2 weeks preparing our proposal. The morning of the presentation, I received a text from an unknown number. Hudson found out you're pitching to Regional Retail Group. He's meeting with their CEO right now. I froze, staring at my phone. After all these years, they were still working to destroy me. Everything okay? Danny asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the message. They're trying to cut us off before we can even present. Can they still do that? After all this time? I took a deep breath. Let's find out. We arrived at Regional Retail Group's headquarters 30 minutes early. In the lobby bathroom, I splashed water on my face and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back had changed from the one who'd been escorted from her own company 12 years ago. Hardship had sharpened me. Struggle had strengthened me. As we approached the reception desk, I saw them through the glass conference room doors. Hudson, Brielle, and Wren, laughing with Regional's executive team like old friends. Hudson happened to glance up, his smile freezing when he spotted me. For a moment, I considered walking away. They had connections, resources, a 30-person team. We had 5 people working out of a converted warehouse space, but they didn't have what mattered most: genuine innovation. For years, they'd been recycling my old ideas, making minor adjustments to strategies I'd developed before they pushed me out. I straightened my spine and approached the receptionist. Amelia Gray and team from New Vision Partners. We have a presentation scheduled. Hudson was already striding toward us, hand extended, face arranged in a practiced expression of surprise. Amelia. What an unexpected pleasure. It's been too long. Behind that smile, I saw something new in his eyes. Fear. Hudson, I replied, not taking his hand. I didn't realize you'd be here. Our meeting with Regional starts in 20 minutes. Yes, well. He glanced back at the conference room where Brielle and Wren were now standing, watching us. We were just wrapping up, old friends catching up. The regional marketing director approached, looking uncomfortable. Amelia, I'm sorry. I should have told you. When the executive team heard we were considering your proposal, they wanted to hear from Gray Hudson Park as well. Hudson's smile widened. It's only fair to compare options. Although I'm curious what kind of operation you're running these days, Amelia. Something small and specialized, I assume. The condescension in his voice ignited something in me. 12 years of being sidelined, erased, and undermined crystallized into perfect clarity. Actually, Hudson, we specialize in results. Speaking of which, how's the Hargrove campaign going? I heard their sales are down 20% since you took over. His smile faltered. Hargrove had been a loyal client of mine before the ouster. Under my guidance, they'd seen double-digit growth for 3 consecutive years. Market fluctuations, he said dismissively. They're repositioning, of course. And Westway Hospitality? Still having trouble with customer retention? A muscle twitched in his jaw. These were public struggles his firm was having, carefully tracked by industry watchers. Clients that had thrived under my leadership were now underperforming under theirs. We should catch up sometime, Amelia. For old time's sake, he said, clearly trying to end the conversation. We're catching up right now, I replied pleasantly. Unless you need to leave? I understand large agencies like yours have so many clients to juggle. Quality must be difficult to maintain at that scale. The regional CEO approached, hand extended. Ms. Gray? I'm Alex Torres. I've heard interesting things about your approach. Hudson tried to interject, but Torres continued. We've been with Gray Hudson Park for our digital campaigns, but our results have plateaued. Your reputation with community-centered strategies caught my attention. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, ignoring Hudson's darkening expression. We're excited to share our vision. I'm looking forward to it, Torres replied. We're actually running ahead of schedule. Would you be ready to present now? I smiled. Absolutely. As we followed Torres toward the conference room, Hudson stepped in beside me, voice low. This is cute, Amelia. Playing the underdog. But don't embarrass yourself. These people need scale and resources that your little operation can't provide. I paused, turning to face him directly. You know what your problem is, Hudson. You still think this business is about who has the biggest office or the most employees. It never was. It's about who has the best ideas. And you haven't had an original idea since you pushed me out the door. His face flushed. We'll see about that. The presentation room fell silent as we entered. Brielle and Ren looked as polished and confident as ever. But I noticed new lines around their eyes, a tightness in their expressions. Torres addressed the room. Since both teams are here, I thought we could try something different. Rather than separate presentations, let's have a conversation. What's your assessment of our current market position, and how would you approach our challenges? Hudson jumped in immediately with rehearsed talking points about digital transformation and social media analytics. I let him speak, watching the executives' faces. They'd heard this all before. When he finished, Torres turned to me. Ms. Gray, your thoughts? I took a breath. With respect, I think you're asking the wrong question. Your market position isn't the problem. It's your connection with your customers. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos I'd taken in 3 of their stores. I visited 12 of your locations last week. In each one, I asked regular customers what made them choose your stores over competitors or online options. Not a single person mentioned your prices or your products. The executives leaned forward as I continued. They talked about Tony at your downtown location, who remembers everyone's names. They mentioned the community board at your West Side store, where local events are featured. They talked about how your South County manager helped a customer find a special order item from a competitor when you didn't carry it. One executive nodded. That's Paula. She's been with us 15 years. Exactly. Your competitive advantage isn't your products or prices. It's your people and your place in the community. But none of your current marketing reflects that. Yep, I unveiled our proposal. A complete strategy shift that would spotlight the human connections in their stores, featuring actual employees and customers in location-specific campaigns. This isn't just about warm feelings, I explained. Research shows consumers will pay 23% more and travel further to shop at businesses where they feel a personal connection. While your competitors race to the bottom on price, you can win on relationship. By the time I finished outlining our strategy, the energy in the room had completely shifted. The regional team was engaged, asking specific questions, building on our ideas with their own insights. Hudson tried repeatedly to redirect the conversation back to metrics and analytics, but it was clear he'd lost the room. When Torres announced they needed time to deliberate, Brielle looked pale. As we packed up our materials, Hudson approached one last time. Impressive, he said tightly. But we both know you don't have the infrastructure to implement a 30-location campaign. When you fail to deliver, we'll be there to pick up the pieces. I smiled. That's where you're wrong, Hudson. I've spent 12 years building exactly what these clients need. You've spent 12 years coasting on old ideas while watching your results decline. The difference is, I learned from my struggles. What have you learned from your success? Before he could answer, Torres approached. Amelia, do you have time to discuss a few details privately? But I nodded, gathering my things. As I followed Torres out, I glanced back to see Ren and Brielle in heated conversation with Hudson. The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. The regional account was ours. That victory changed everything. Within months, the success of our regional campaign had attracted attention throughout the industry. Businesses that had once considered us too small began reaching out. We moved to a larger office and hired 10 new team members, all selected for their unique perspectives and genuine passion. I was careful never to compete directly with Gray Hudson Park. We didn't target their existing clients or copy their approaches. Instead, we created an entirely new model that made their methods look increasingly outdated. Our reputation grew. Business journals wrote about the new vision approach to community-centered marketing. I was invited to speak at conferences and universities. Always, I deflected personal attention to focus on our work and our team. Then came the opportunity that would change everything. 11 years and 10 months after being pushed out of my own company, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Amelia Gray? The voice was unfamiliar. Yes, who's calling? My name is Jamie Wheeler. I'm the new CEO of National Shopping Network. I nearly dropped the phone. NSN was the largest retail corporation in the region, with over 200 locations across 5 states. They were also Gray Hudson Park's biggest and longest-standing client. What can I do for you, Jamie? I've been watching your work with Regional. Their growth numbers are impressive, especially their customer loyalty metrics. I'd like to discuss the possibility of your firm handling our entire marketing strategy going forward. My heart raced. That's a significant opportunity. Aren't you currently working with Gray Hudson Park? We are, for now. The implication was clear. Can you meet tomorrow? The next morning, I gathered our leadership team. This is bigger than anything we've taken on. If we get this account, it changes everything. Danny, now my creative director, looked concerned. This is direct competition with your former partners. Are you sure you want to go head-to-head with them? I considered the question. For years, I'd built a separate path, never directly challenging Hudson and the others. Part of me had been avoiding the confrontation, focusing on building something new rather than destroying what they had. This isn't about them, I said finally. NSN came to us. They need what we offer. If that means Gray Hudson Park loses their biggest client, that's business. The pitch meeting went brilliantly. Our research into NSN's customer base revealed patterns and opportunities that their current agency had missed. Jamie Wheeler didn't even pretend to consider other options. I've made my decision, he announced at the end of our presentation. New Vision Partners will handle all NSN marketing effective immediately. I'll have legal draft the contracts. 2 days later, the business news broke. National Shopping Network ends 15-year relationship with Gray Hudson Park moves account to New Vision Partners. The industry was stunned. NSN represented nearly 30% of Gray Hudson Park's annual revenue. Their stock price dropped 15% by market close. That evening, my phone lit up with a familiar number I hadn't seen in 12 years. I stared at it, heart pounding, before answering. Hello, Amelia? Hudson's voice was warm, friendly, as if the past 12 years had never happened. Congratulations on the NSN account. That's quite an achievement. Thank you, I replied cautiously. Listen, I've been thinking. This industry has changed so much since we started. Your approach with community engagement is clearly resonating. Our methods with data analytics and scale still have value. Have you ever considered the potential of joining forces again? I nearly laughed out loud. Joining forces? A merger. Your vision, our infrastructure. We could dominate the market together, like we always planned. That's an interesting proposal, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Why now? He chuckled, the sound hollow. Let's be honest. We both have something the other needs. You've built an impressive boutique operation with a fresh approach. We have the established client base and operational capacity. Together, we'd be unstoppable. What he wasn't saying. They were bleeding clients and needed my innovation to survive. I'd need to discuss this with my leadership team, I said. Can we meet next week? Absolutely. How about lunch on Monday? The 4 of us. You, me, Ren, and Brielle. For old time's sake. Make it a formal meeting at our office, I countered. If we're discussing a potential merger, I want my team involved from the beginning. So, he hesitated only briefly. Of course. Tuesday at 10? Perfect. After hanging up, I sat motionless, absorbing what had just happened. After 12 years of working to destroy my career, Hudson was now proposing a partnership, not because he valued me or regretted what they'd done, but because they needed what I had built. The question was, what would I do with this opportunity? For the first time in 12 years, I held all the cards. When I told my team about Hudson's merger proposal, their reactions ranged from disbelief to outrage. You can't seriously be considering this, Danny said, pacing around our conference room. These people destroyed your career, blacklisted you across the industry, and now that you're successful, they want to join forces. I'm not considering anything yet, I replied. I'm listening. There's a difference. Marco, our operations director, frowned. This feels like a trap. What's stopping them from absorbing our client relationships and then pushing you out again? Nothing, I acknowledged. Except this time, I'd be going in with my eyes open. Over the weekend, I received 3 calls from industry contacts. Hudson was apparently telling people the merger was practically finalized. He was positioning it as Gray Hudson Park acquiring New Vision partners, with me returning to the fold. By Monday morning, industry blogs were speculating about the potential merger. Our clients were calling, concerned about what it meant for their accounts. The narrative was already being shaped, not as equals coming together, but as the established player swallowing the upstart. Classic Hudson, I muttered, reviewing the articles. He's trying to pressure us by creating public expectation. Tuesday morning arrived with a flurry of activity. Our office had been meticulously prepared for the meeting. The conference room displayed case studies of our most successful campaigns, awards we'd won, and growth charts for our clients. At 9:58, the receptionist called up. Ms. Gray, your guests have arrived. I took a deep breath. Send them up in 5 minutes. I gathered my team in the conference room. Remember, we're just listening today. No commitments. No agreements. Let them do most of the talking. At precisely 10:05, Hudson, Brielle, and Wren stepped off the elevator. They looked exactly as I remembered, yet somehow diminished. Hudson's confident stride seemed more performed than natural. Brielle's designer outfit couldn't quite hide the tension in her shoulders. Wren's smile appeared strained. Amelia! Hudson opened his arms as if expecting a hug. I extended my hand instead. Welcome to New Vision Partners. This is my leadership team. Danny Chen, our creative director. Marco Jimenez, operations. Elena Patel, client strategy. And Will Torres, research and analytics. Quite the operation you've built, Brielle commented, glancing around. Our office was modern but modest, functional rather than flashy. Charming. The condescension in her tone wasn't lost on anyone. We focus our resources on results rather than appearances, I replied evenly. Please, let's sit. Once settled in the conference room, Hudson launched into his pitch. The market was changing. Clients wanted integrated approaches. Our 2 companies had complementary strengths. Together, we could dominate the industry. We're prepared to offer very favorable terms, he said, sliding a folder across the table. You'd have a significant leadership role in the combined entity, equity stake, compensation package. I didn't touch the folder. Before we discuss terms, I'd like to understand the vision better. What exactly do you see each company contributing to this merger? Wren jumped in. Your community engagement strategies have proven effective for certain client segments. Our data-driven approach works well for others. Combined, we offer a full spectrum. And the leadership structure? I asked. We envision a smooth integration, Hudson replied smoothly. You'd lead creative strategy, reporting to our executive committee. Your team would be evaluated for appropriate positions within our existing structure. I noted the language. Evaluated, appropriate positions, our structure. Nothing had changed. They still saw themselves as the superior entity, graciously allowing me a place at their table. I see. And what about your current challenges? I understand you've lost several major accounts recently. Is that trend continuing? Hudson's smile tightened. Market fluctuations? Nothing concerning. And your stock price dropping 30% over the past year? Temporary adjustment, Wren interjected. Actually, news of our potential merger has already sparked investor interest. Yes, I saw the articles suggesting you were acquiring us, I noted. Interesting framing since we haven't agreed to anything. Brielle leaned forward. Amelia, let's be direct. You've built an impressive boutique agency with a specific niche, but you don't have the infrastructure to properly service NSN long-term. They'll realize that eventually. We're offering you a way to leverage our resources while maintaining your creative vision. End quote. I appreciate your concern, I replied. But NSN came to us specifically because they weren't satisfied with the results they were getting from your infrastructure. So I'm curious why you think combining our approaches would benefit either of us. Hudson's expression darkened momentarily before he forced another smile. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Amelia. For old time's sake. My team stays, I said firmly. We make decisions together here. Fine. His tone shifted, becoming more direct. The truth is, this industry is consolidating. Smaller agencies are being absorbed or eliminated. You've had a good run, but without proper scale, you won't survive the next 5 years. We're offering you security and recognition for what you've built. I studied him for a moment. Can I ask you something, Hudson? In the 12 years since you forced me out of my own company, changed the locks while I was caring for my dying mother, and blacklisted me across the industry, did you ever once consider you might have made a mistake? The room fell silent. Hudson glanced at Ren and Brielle, clearly uncomfortable with this direct reference to their past actions. Business decisions are complex, he finally said. We did what we thought was necessary at the time. And now? What's necessary now? He sighed, dropping the pretense. We need your approach, Amelia. Our clients are demanding the kind of community engagement strategies you've pioneered. Our teams can't replicate it. We've tried. So to be clear, I said, you're not offering me a merger of equals. You're not even offering me a fair acquisition. You're asking me to save the company you stole from me. Brielle interjected. That's an emotional characterization. I have Gen. It's an accurate one. I cut her off. You orchestrated a coup while I was caring for my dying mother. You systematically contacted every potential employer to ensure I couldn't work in this industry again. You forced me to start over from nothing. And look what you built, Hudson gestured around. Clearly it worked out. No thanks to you, Danny muttered. I stood up. We'll need time to consider your proposal. In the meantime, I'd like to understand exactly what we'd be getting. Would you be willing to share your current client list, retention rates, and profitability numbers? They exchanged glances. That's highly confidential, Ren objected. So is a merger discussion, I countered. If you want this conversation to continue, we need complete transparency. Hudson hesitated, then nodded. We can provide high-level overviews. Under NDA, of course. Of course. Send them over by Friday, and we'll reconvene next week. After they left, my team erupted. You can't seriously be considering this, Elena exclaimed. I'm not, I assured them. But I am very interested in seeing those numbers. The data arrived Thursday afternoon. It was worse than I'd imagined. Grey Hudson Park had lost not just NSN, but 5 other major clients in the past year. Their profit margins had shrunk to nearly nothing. Most tellingly, their client retention rate had plummeted to just 42%. They're desperate, Marco observed as we reviewed the figures. Without NSN, they're barely staying afloat. And they know it, I added. Which explains why Hudson is suddenly interested in my community engagement strategies after 12 years of dismissing them. That night, I couldn't sleep. The position I now found myself in seemed almost surreal. After years of struggling, of being excluded and undermined, I held the power to save or destroy the very people who had tried to erase me. The question wasn't whether I could take revenge, it was whether I should. And if so, what form that revenge should take. By morning, I had my answer. The following Tuesday, Hudson, Ren, and Brielle returned, looking expectant. We've reviewed your proposal and your financial information. I began once we were seated. Based on our analysis, we've come to a decision. Hudson leaned forward eagerly. I knew you'd see the potential. Together, we'll dominate this market. Actually, we're declining your merger offer. His expression froze. What? We're declining. New Vision partners will remain independent. Brielle shook her head. Amelia, you're not thinking clearly. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Amelia, no, Brielle. The opportunity of a lifetime was 12 years ago, when you had the chance to be decent human beings. Instead, you chose betrayal. This is business, not personal, Ren argued. It became personal when you called every agency in town to blacklist me. I replied, When you made sure I couldn't earn a living in the industry I helped build. Hudson's face darkened. So, this is about revenge? Turning us down just to watch us struggle? No, I said calmly. This is about something you've never understood: value. You see, while you were busy pushing me out and taking credit for my ideas, you failed to create anything new. You've been recycling the same strategies for 12 years, wondering why they're becoming less effective. I slid a folder across the table. This is our counteroffer. Hudson opened it, confusion crossing his face. What is this? A consulting proposal. New Vision Partners will provide strategic consulting services to Gray Hudson Park for a period of 12 months. We'll help you transition your approach to better serve your remaining clients. In exchange, you'll pay us a monthly retainer plus performance bonuses based on client retention improvements. Ren scoffed. You want us to hire you as consultants? That's your counteroffer to our merger proposal? Yes, because you don't need a merger. You need innovation, something you've lacked since you pushed me out. This is insulting, Brielle snapped, standing up. We offered you a partnership, and you're treating us like clients. I'm offering you salvation, I corrected her. Because the truth is, without NSN and with your current client retention rate, Gray Hudson Park will be insolvent within 8 months. This is your lifeline. Hudson stared at me, realization dawning. You already knew everything before we sent over the financials. This was your plan all along. I did my research, I acknowledged. Just as you should have done before approaching me with a merger proposal that benefited only you. And if we refuse your generous offer? Ren asked coldly. I shrugged. That's your choice. But the industry already knows you're in trouble. When Gray Hudson Park folds, I'll ensure everyone understands it wasn't because I rejected your merger offer. It was because you never understood what makes this business work: genuine innovation and human connection. The three of them sat in stunned silence. You've got 48 hours to decide, I said, standing up. Marco will show you out. The next day, industry blogs reported that merger talks between Gray Hudson Park and New Vision Partners had fallen through. Their stock dropped another 12%. At 4:57 p.m. on Thursday, my assistant forwarded me an email from Hudson. The subject line read simply, "We accept." Over the next 12 months, New Vision Partners transformed Gray Hudson Park's approach, teaching them the community engagement strategies I'd developed after being forced to start over. We helped them rebuild client relationships and stabilize their business. In return, they paid us nearly as much as they'd collectively earned during the 12 years they'd kept me out of the industry. The true victory wasn't financial, though. It was watching Hudson, Ren, and Brielle implement my strategies under my guidance, acknowledging with every action that I had been right all along. At the end of our consulting contract, I met with Hudson one last time. You could have destroyed us, he said quietly. Instead, you saved us. Why? Because success is the best revenge, I replied. You took my company, my clients, and my reputation. But you couldn't take my creativity or my resilience, forcing you to pay me to teach you what you threw away 12 years ago. That's justice. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know. But some things can't be undone, Hudson. Only rebuilt differently. Today, New Vision Partners continues to thrive. We've expanded to 3 offices serving clients across the country. Gray Hudson Park survives as a smaller but stable agency, forever in our shadow. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's forcing them to recognize that they destroyed themselves when they underestimated you. If you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told you weren't good enough, remember this. Your greatest power lies in proving them wrong on your own terms. Like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share in the comments a time when you turned rejection into your greatest strength. Remember, success isn't just about winning. It's about redefining the game so completely that those who tried to exclude you end up following your lead.